President Trump's tariffs are one of the most harmful and unnecessary mistakes of the modern era.
They rip us off. It's so sad to see.
Almost everything Donald Trump has said about the history, economics, and technicalities of trade is delusional.
We haven't really had a lot of luck with Canada.
America's once crowded ports now stand in silence. Containers gather dust, trucks turn back halfway, and in Ottawa, a single handshake rewrote 75 years of trade history. Not one nation, but 11 countries simultaneously abandoned the United States and turned to Canada. In less than 18 months, over $127 billion in trade has been rerouted. Shipping routes that once flowed to Los Angeles, Houston, and Miami now head straight for Vancouver, Halifax, and Toronto. This is no longer a market fluctuation, it is a systematic abandonment. The first defection came from Chile, where fruit once tied to California now streams directly into Canada. Jamaica soon followed, pulling away from Miami to send rum and bananas through Halifax and Toronto. Germany, the industrial powerhouse of Europe, shifted not only cheese and meats but also machinery to Hamilton and Laval.
Are you confident in Trump's ability to manage our policy toward China, our relationship with Canada, our relationship with Israel? No, no, and no. Not confident in any of those things.
The tide then swept across Asia. South Korea redirected semiconductors and electronics once destined for Los Angeles toward Vancouver. Brazil diverted beef and ethanol to Saskatoon, leaving American plants behind. And then came the blows from others: French wine, Egyptian wheat, Mexican tequila, Indian spices, British pastries, even Japanese matcha and sushi, all rerouted to Canada, leaving the U.S. standing on the outside. The reason was not price, it was a treatment. The United States had turned trade into a weapon of punishment. Tariffs, endless inspections, suffocating paperwork. Partners came to see economic ties not as business but as political leverage. Canada, meanwhile, offered three things America had lost: predictability, respect, and mutual benefit. That difference made Canada more than an alternative, it became the better choice. This was not a coordinated attack, it was a natural flow of water finding the path of least resistance, and that path was Canada. The results are visible every day. U.S. ports run below capacity, trucks have no cargo, food processing plants sit idle. Farmers and workers lose their livelihoods, border towns sink into crisis.
New Delhi has been recalibrating its foreign policy toward Beijing after Washington threatened higher tariffs over its continued purchases of Russian oil.
But the wound cuts deeper than economics. When French champagne, Japanese matcha, or British pastries no longer fill shelves in New York but flood stores in Toronto and Montreal, America's cultural prestige crumbles alongside its trade flows. In meeting rooms across 11 capitals, the same question was asked: do we still need America? And the answer grew sharper each time: no. That is the most dangerous loss of all, the loss of necessity, the very foundation of leadership. Once loyalty becomes a burden, nations will walk away, and America now faces the brutal truth: when you are no longer needed, you are no longer heard, and when you are no longer heard, you no longer lead. 11 nations have already proven it, and the list is far from complete. How many others are quietly preparing their escape from U.S. dependence? How many partners are calculating the day they will leave? The thread connecting America to global prosperity is snapping link by link, and the fall from the heights of influence is no longer a distant scenario, it is staring America in the face.
President Donald Trump faced some booing from the crowd at the FIFA Club World Cup final.
Philadelphia acknowledges that the Trump administration's general crackdown on immigration could impact their World Cup event.
The countdown to the 2026 World Cup is ticking louder by the day, but instead of celebration, a political and economic earthquake is threatening to rip marquee matches out of U.S. soil. What should have been America's golden stage to showcase its soft power to billions is turning into a brutal stress test for the Trump administration's trade and immigration policies. FIFA isn't bluffing. With just 90 days' notice, entire blocks of group stage matches could be pulled from the United States and sent north or south of the border. And here's the chilling part: this backup plan is already locked and loaded. The cause? A web of tariffs and visa barriers tightening around every part of the tournament. Visas like fortress walls. 12 countries are outright banned from entering, including Iran, already qualified for the tournament. Tens of thousands of fans are raced from the stands with the stroke of a policy pen. For those still eligible, a $250 visa integrity fee and wait times stretching over 300 days have made attending the World Cup nearly impossible. tariffs strangling the supply chain. Every steel beam for upper decks, every LED scoreboard, every flood night system is stuck at border checkpoints under new rules. Costs are skyrocketing, timelines slipping by weeks or even months. Stadiums are being forced to cut features and swap in cheaper materials, the kind the world will see clearly on live broadcasts.
We want them to come, we want them to celebrate, we want them to watch the game, but when the time is up, they'll have to go home.
The result? A double disaster for both the economy and America's reputation. Economy. Billions in tourism revenue could vanish if matches shift to Canada or Mexico. Hotels, restaurants, and bars, geared up for a record-breaking summer, could instead face empty rooms, mounting debt, and staff layoffs. Tens of thousands of seasonal workers, servers, translators, security personnel would lose the income they counted on to cover months of rent, medical bills, or debt payments. Reputation. The World Cup is a declaration of a nation's ability to deliver on the world stage. Losing matches not because of natural disaster or war, but because of domestic policy would leave a stain not easily erased. International organizers could start seeing the U.S. as a risky bet for future global events.
It is a great achievement to bring the World Cup next year, the FIFA World Cup in 26 here in the United States, together with Mexico and Canada.
Meanwhile, Canada and Mexico are quietly seizing the moment. Canada boasts political stability, world-class sports infrastructure, and fast, straightforward visa processing, visa-free for many countries. Vancouver and Toronto are already upgrading their stadiums to FIFA's highest standards. Mexico brings the pedigree of hosting the 1970 and 1986 World Cups, legendary venues like Estadio Azteca and BBVA, and an open-door entry policy for much of Latin America, fans who could fill stadiums with just a short flight. If FIFA pulls the trigger, the map of the World Cup will be redrawn. The U.S., once the centerpiece, could find itself pushed to the sidelines, watching Canada and Mexico take the spotlight. And this wouldn't just be a sporting loss, it would be a diplomatic collapse. The world won't remember who won the opening match, but they will remember how the U.S. lost it. In the game of soft power, the image of empty seats, relocated matches, and fans turned away at the border will outlast any highlight reel. The question now isn't whether America has the money or the stadiums. The question is, will the U.S. tear down the policy walls to keep the World Cup, or will it go down in history as the nation that lost it, not on the field, but in the meeting room?
President, you gain 10 times more income for the average family than Joe Biden is because of your policies.
And that's taken into consideration COVID, which a lot of times you don't have to do that.
Prices are starting to rise for American consumers as President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs on nearly all imported goods are kicking in.
In just a few months, the United States has witnessed an unprecedented wave of supermarket closures. Walmart, the symbol of affordable groceries, is pulling out of dozens of communities, leaving behind sprawling food deserts where residents must drive for miles just to buy milk or a bundle of fresh vegetables. On the surface, the reason seems simple: falling sales, rising costs. But behind the scenes lies a tangled chain of causes, from President Trump's new tariff policies to escalating trade friction with Canada and Mexico to the cold, calculated profit strategies of retail giants. The Trump administration slapped new import tariffs on a wide range of food and consumer products under the banner of protecting domestic production. But the truth is, many of these products simply cannot be produced in sufficient quantities in the U.S., especially fresh produce, fruits, and certain meats.
Instagram video by Mercedes Chandler shows price tags torn off old prices. $6.98 shirts now $10.98. Backpacks up from $19.97 to $24.
When tariffs hit, import prices surged by 20 to 50%. Retailers were forced to either raise shelf prices or cut supply. Walmart, whose empire is built on the promise of low prices, faced an ugly choice: accept historically low profit margins or pull out of low-profit markets. They chose the latter. Canada, America's largest agricultural partner, retaliated with tighter import standards, from quarantine checks to traceability requirements to new permits, making it harder for U.S. goods to enter the Canadian market. Mexico seized the moment to strike deals with alternative suppliers, cutting its dependence on American farm products. The fallout was brutal. Millions of tons of goods piled up in storage, farm prices collapsed, but retail prices still rose due to distribution costs and tariffs stacked on top of each other. For Walmart, especially in low-income areas, the math didn't work. The easiest way to stop the bleeding? Close the doors. Walmart is not a charity. Every store runs on a strict profit formula. When logistics costs soared, thanks to tariffs and higher fuel prices, and consumer spending dropped due to inflation, rural and small-town locations became liabilities.
You're absorbing the cost right now.
I'm absorbing the cost.
Will you continue to absorb the cost?
No. No, I won't. I can't afford to.
Corporate boards look at spreadsheets, not community maps. The result? Entire towns lost their only affordable source of fresh groceries with a single network restructuring announcement. Tariffs, higher import costs, higher retail prices, lower consumer spending, shrinking profit margins, store closures, the birth of food deserts. In states like Arkansas, Ohio, and New Mexico, the nearest supermarket is now 30 to 50 miles away. Residents are left relying on convenience stores, which mostly sell processed foods, snacks, and canned goods, fueling a rise in diabetes, heart disease, and malnutrition. Trump frames this as a tough strategy to win trade advantages, but governors and mayors call it shooting ourselves in the foot. They warn that slapping tariffs and triggering retaliatory measures without strengthening domestic distribution systems is a recipe for localized food crises. The tension is clear. Washington plays geopolitical chess, while small-town America pays with empty shelves and rising grocery bills. The truth is, you don't need a hurricane or a drought to spark a food crisis. All it takes is a string of policy decisions and corporate strategies made without regard for the people they affect. From the White House to Walmart's boardroom, the numbers on a balance sheet have outweighed the basic human need for a meal. And when the last store in town shuts its doors, a food desert is no longer an abstract term. It's your home address. So here's the question. When policymakers and market giants treat your dinner table as just another data point, who will stand up for your right to eat?
How much we love Americans, how much we love the U.S. And as I've said on this show many times, that a tariff on Canada is a tax on the American people.
President Trump hit Canada with an increase of 35% tariffs last Friday. But both sides of the border are still negotiating for a mutually beneficial deal. Canadian officials tell me they're expecting trade talks to take a while, saying things are moving slowly.
U.S.-Canada relations are at a breaking point. No more polite diplomacy. No more forced handshakes. In a bombshell interview, Ontario Premier Doug Ford declared, Trump is the most disliked politician in Canada. And he's not exaggerating, because what President Trump is doing doesn't just infuriate Canadians. It's hurting American families, killing American jobs, and isolating America from its closest ally. The Trump administration has unleashed the highest import tariff since the Great Depression. Mexico 25%, Canada 35% if they fail to fully comply with USMCA. Other nations like Switzerland, India, Vietnam, China, and more are being hit with 20 to 50% tariffs.
He did say there's one way all countries could get out of a tariff hike in this scenario.
But if you're building in the United States of America, there's no charge.
The result? Skyrocketing prices, shattered supply chains, and global trade chaos. Ontario Premier Doug Ford didn't hold back. Trump isn't just punishing Canada, he's attacking his closest family member. Ford reminded Americans, Ontario alone supports 9 million U.S. jobs. Canada is a lifeline for U.S. industry, and Trump is severing that line. Over 37,000 Americans have lost jobs since the tariffs hit, and the toll is rising.
He's probably the most disliked politician in the world in Canada because he's attacked his closest family member, and that's the way we look at it.
A tariff on Canada is a tax on the American people, Ford said bluntly. Trump isn't protecting Americans, he's hurting them. Canada isn't retaliating with bombs, it's walking off the battlefield. Instead of tit-for-tat tariffs, Canada is diversifying, decoupling, and defending itself. Trade with the EU is up 25%. Exports to the UK have jumped 30%. Ontario alone attracted over $40 billion in new investments. Canada is reshoring manufacturing that used to rely on American supply chains. Ford made it clear, we will outlast the Trump administration, and we will never bow. CNN reports confirm the damage. Prices on electronics, toys, alcohol, clothing, shoes, watches, and steel have all surged. Families are paying 20, 30, even 50% more for everyday goods. American manufacturing is shrinking. Businesses are relocating to avoid tariffs.
President Trump says he will impose a 100% tariff on computer chips sometime soon, but he didn't give an exact timeline. But that could impact prices on electronics, cars, and appliances.
The latest estimate from the Yale Budget Lab, the average American family will lose $2,400 a year if these tariffs stay in place. So much for bringing jobs home. The truth is, factories are shutting down. Workers are being laid off. Families can't pay rent or mortgages. Ford didn't mince words. Trump isn't defending American workers, he's gutting them. For decades, Canada has stood by the United States as a loyal ally, as a trade partner, as a trusted friend. But under Trump, that friendship is under siege, not just because of tariffs, but because of arrogance, betrayal, and reckless ego. Doug Ford spoke for millions of Canadians when he said, "We love Americans, but no one loves a friend who puts their hands around your neck and calls it loyalty." If Trump keeps down this path, he won't just lose a partner. He'll lose the last shred of trust the world still has in America. He's not building American strength. He's burning bridges and burying American jobs with them.